For 2 decades, Tom Cruise dominated Hollywood as not only a box office draw, but also a respected actor, earning multiple Oscar nominations. But then the cracks started to show. His infamous Oprah couch jumping incident in 2005 turned him into a punchline, his public advocacy for Scientology alienated audiences, and his heated feud with Paramount led the studio to sever ties with him. Once seen as Hollywood's golden boy, Cruise was suddenly radioactive. Then, against all odds, he pulled off one of the most remarkable reinventions in film history. No longer just a charming leading man, Cruise rebuilt his brand as the ultimate action star, one who didn't just play heroes, but actually risked his life performing jaw-dropping stunts. He scaled the Burj Khalifa, clung to the side of a plane mid-takeoff, and even learned to fly fighter jets, redefining what it meant to be an action star in the process. But how did he do it? How did he go from one of the biggest movie stars on the planet to industry outcast, only to rise again as the face of one of the biggest action franchises in history, and the man who, to quote Steven Spielberg, saved Hollywood with Top Gun Maverick when the COVID pandemic nearly killed the theater-going experience? To answer that question, let's dive in and take a look at the rise, fall, and rise again of Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise wasn't Tom Cruise when Risky Business hit theaters in 1983. He was just another fresh-faced actor desperate to prove himself. That drive led him to Francis Ford Coppola, where he auditioned for The Outsiders and begged for a role. Any role. Salary didn't matter. Screen time didn't matter. He just wanted to work with a great director. Coppola would relent and cast him, but only as one of the film's tertiary characters. During The Outsiders production, Cruise auditioned for Risky Business, and suddenly, he had a choice. Coppola offered him another role in Rumblefish, but Risky Business was something different. It wasn't just another teen comedy, it was a sharp-edged satire of capitalism and an 80s answer to The Graduate set in Reagan's America. Taking inspiration from one of the film's mantras, Cruise thought, sometimes you have to just say, what the f***? And he did. He walked away from Coppola and took a chance on a film no one expected to be a star-making vehicle. And just as his character's wild gamble, turning his family home into a high-end brothel, transforms him from an aimless, nervous teenager into a confident deal-maker, Risky Business did the same for Cruise. His own what the f*** moment, choosing this film over a sure thing with Coppola, proved to be the right bet, launching him from an unknown into Hollywood's next big thing. After seeing Risky Business, producer Jerry Bruckheimer knew Tom Cruise was the perfect choice to play Maverick in Top Gun, but convincing him wasn't easy. Cruise was hesitant, so Bruckheimer arranged for him to fly with the Blue Angels at the Naval Air Facility in El Centro, California. Cruise arrived on his motorcycle, fresh off of filming Legend, with long hair tied in a ponytail. The pilots took one look at him and decided to give the hippie a ride he'd never forget. They put him through wild aerial maneuvers, flipping him upside down and pushing the jet to its limits, hoping to scare him off. Instead, the moment they landed, Cruise walked straight to a phone booth, called Bruckheimer, and said, "Jerry, I'm making the movie. I love it." Top Gun would go on to be the highest-grossing film of the year, cementing Cruise as an A-list star and igniting his lifelong obsession with high-adrenaline thrills. While filming Top Gun, however, he'd meet future wife Mimi Rogers, who would ignite another passion in him, Scientology. Rogers wasn't just a believer, she had grown up in the church, deeply immersed in its teachings, and had become an auditor, trained in guiding others through Scientology spiritual counseling. She introduced Cruise to the church's philosophy, and before long he was fully committed, seeing it as a path to self-improvement and success. Their relationship may not have lasted, but his devotion to Scientology would remain a defining part of his life and career. A few years later, Cruise reunited with Top Gun producers Jerry Bruckheimer and Don Simpson, along with director Tony Scott, to try and recapture lightning in a bottle, this time trading jet planes for race cars in Days of Thunder. The film had all the hallmarks of a Top Gun successor, but failed to match that film's success. However, Days of Thunder would change Cruise's life in a different way. On set, he met Nicole Kidman, a rising star who would soon become his next leading lady, both on screen and off. Continuing to take bold and unexpected roles, Cruise faced one of his biggest challenges yet when he was cast as Lestat in Interview with a Vampire, a decision that sparked immediate backlash from fans and even the book's author, Anne Rice. She publicly dismissed the decision, declaring that Cruise was no more my vampire Lestat than Edward G. Robinson as Rhett Butler, and calling the casting so bizarre. It's almost impossible to imagine how it's going to work. She even suggested that Cruise and Brad Pitt swap roles, believing Pitt would be a better fit for the flamboyant and ruthless Lestat. But once the film was released, Rice had a dramatic change of heart. After watching Cruise's performance, she admitted, "From the moment he appeared, Tom was Lestat for me." Impressed by how he embodied the character's charm and menace, she personally called Cruise to praise his work and admit she had been wrong. By the mid-90s, Cruise wasn't just starring in movies. He he was making them. He launched his own production company and chose Mission Impossible as its first project, reviving the long-dormant TV series that Paramount had struggled for years to adapt. Around this time, he also struck up a friendship with his neighbor, Steven Spielberg. One night, during a dinner at Spielberg's house, director Brian De Palma was also in attendance. Intrigued by the idea of working with him, Cruise went home and spent the next 14 hours rewatching all of De Palma's films, realizing by the end that he had found the perfect director for Mission Impossible. The result was a slick, suspenseful thriller, far more in line with De Palma's trademark paranoia and intricate plotting than the high-octane spectacle the franchise would later become known for. In '99, Cruise and then-wife, Nicole Kidman, took on one of the riskiest projects of their careers, Eyes Wide Shut, as Stanley Kubrick deliberately mined their real-life relationship for its themes of desire, jealousy, and secrecy. But before the film was fully completed, Kubrick unexpectedly passed away, sparking debate over whether his true vision had been realized. R. Lee Ermey, who had worked with Kubrick on Full Metal Jacket, later claimed that the director had privately told him Eyes Wide Shut was a disaster, lamenting that Cruise and Kidman had their way with him. However, others close to the production strongly refuted this. According to them, Kubrick was thrilled with the film and had considered the weekend he showed Cruise and Kidman the first cut to be one of the happiest of his life, right before he died. Regardless, just 2 years after its release, the couple divorced, though Kidman has denied the film was to blame. Still, her reaction to the split became iconic. The famous paparazzi shot of her beaming after finalizing the divorce, along with her cheeky remark on The Late Show with David Letterman, that she could finally go back to wearing heels, a not-so-subtle dig at Cruise's height. Meanwhile, Tom Cruise and Steven Spielberg, who had become good friends and neighbors, had been looking to collaborate for years. They had first discussed working together on Rain Man, but Spielberg dropped out to direct Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, due to a promise he made to friend George Lucas to direct all 3 indie films, which Lucas produced. Later, Cruise and Spielberg considered adapting The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, before finally landing on Minority Report, a film that felt like the perfect fit for both. Their creative partnership continued with War of the Worlds, another sci-fi blockbuster, but just as that film was hitting theaters, Cruise's personal life began to spiral, and his public image took a major hit. During War of the Worlds press tour, Cruise's new romance with Katie Holmes, quickly dubbed Tomcat by the media, became tabloid obsession. His now infamous appearance on Oprah, where he jumped on a yellow couch to declare his love for Holmes, left audiences baffled. Then came an awkward, somewhat cringy moment at the 2005 MTV Movie Awards, where Holmes gave an overly dramatic introduction for Cruise. But the controversy didn't stop there. Cruise publicly criticized actress Brooke Shields for using antidepressants to treat postpartum depression, dismissing the legitimacy of chemical imbalances and calling psychiatry a pseudoscience. Behind the scenes, Spielberg was growing frustrated as the director felt Cruise's promotion of Scientology, his controversial comments about mental health, and his increasingly erratic behavior not only overshadowed War of the Worlds' release, but was hurting its box office. Spielberg allegedly asked Cruise to tone it down, but the damage was done. Their friendship soured, and they would never work together again. Shortly after, Cruise returned to his signature franchise with Mission Impossible 3. But the film underperformed compared to its predecessors, with many at the studio believing his tarnished public image had hurt its box office performance. As a result, Paramount ended its 14-year partnership with Cruise's production company, citing his controversial behavior as a liability that had negatively impacted the studio's bottom line. Cruise, however, didn't stay down for long. Shortly after the split, he secured a major deal with MGM to take over United Artists, giving Cruise even greater control over his projects. The goal was to revive UA as a powerhouse for filmmaker-driven projects, with Cruise starring in some of its key films. However, the partnership struggled, and Lions for Lambs, their first film, flopped both critically and commercially, failing to reinvigorate the studio, while Valkyrie's release was marred by anti-Scientology protests. In the late 2000s, Cruise began reinventing himself, not just as a movie star, but as a last great action hero. He had always been a thrill seeker, performing many of his own stunts throughout his career, but in an era where Hollywood was increasingly relying on CGI, Cruise went in the opposite direction. He doubled down on practical effects, making his movies a spectacle that had to be experienced in theaters. As Quentin Tarantino once explained about the Death Proof car chase, practical stunts have a visceral impact because audiences can feel the danger of a real person putting their life on the line, something CGI can never replicate. Cruise understood this better than anyone else, pushing himself to do bigger, more dangerous stunts with each film, but it didn't come without risks. While filming Mission Impossible Fallout, he shattered his ankle while leaping across a rooftop, yet finished the take and insisted it be left in the final cut. His commitment to authenticity became his trademark, drawing audiences in as much for the breathtaking stunts as for the stories themselves. Then came Top Gun: Maverick, a film that proved Cruise wasn't just preserving old-school filmmaking, he was perfecting it. Unlike many legacy sequels that sidelined their original stars to pass the torch, Cruise remained front and center. Audiences didn't want him taking a backseat to the new generation. They wanted to see him in action. The film, shot with real fighter jets and jaw-dropping aerial cinematography, became a massive hit, especially during the COVID pandemic, when theaters were struggling. Its success wasn't just a win for Cruise, but for the entire theatrical experience. And even the industry took notice. After years of estrangement, Steven Spielberg approached Cruise at the 2023 Academy Luncheon and told him, "You saved Hollywood." After nearly 2 decades of distance, the two had come full circle, with Cruise once again proving he was more than just a star. He was the guy keeping the big screen spectacle alive. Thanks for watching, everybody, and don't forget to like and subscribe to Bullets and Blockbusters for more great content.